science. I love my classes. I got a crazy teacher. He wears dark glasses. Things are going great, and they're only getting better. I'm doing all right, getting good grades. The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, coming at you on this warm July evening. It may not be evening when you listen to it, but it's plenty warm here. How you doing, Andrew?
Well, I'm doing okay. Lots of things happening, as there always are in our world.
That's true.
Another week, another penny.
Yeah,
for us, right?
Right. We just passed the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 landing on the moon, or not.
Well,
I believe they did, but
I have no comment.
I knew that would get you. I've been waiting to ask that.
Yeah, you know, I hope we did. That's always my answer to that. I've got my suspicions, but you know what? I'm not going to live or die worrying about it. You know, I like a good I like a good conspiracy, Jay.
Absolutely.
I'm just intrigued by them. It's kind of like, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I sort of have a fascination. Maybe fascination's the wrong word. Interest in studying like serial killers and common denominators between them and people who dictators who ruled countries. And fascination is the wrong word because, quite frankly, you just every time you hear about them, you just want to take a knife and cut their head off. But there's kind of there's something about that cult of personality or something, and the moon landing is one of those sexy topics that will be debated for ever and ever, I suppose.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess I will say this, that, if you take the official story, we went up there, we landed on the moon, we beat the snot out of the Russians. Who doesn't like a story like that? Well, not the Soviets. They were the Soviets at the time.
Well, if you're Russian, I still don't trust them. So that's just not Russian citizens, Russian government.
Government, yes. It's all ex-KGB agents, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's going to be for a while. That generation's, that's where the people in power there now grew up in the 70s and 80s under communist rule. So, but, hey, look, I could go on and on about the moon landing, and we already have, but I said 1/100th of what I could have.
Right.
The one thing I'll throw out about the moon landing being a conspiracy is that it's the only conspiracy I can think of that's a positive conspiracy.
Right.
If you believe in a JFK conspiracy, okay, he's still dead.
Right.
How does it really matter? He's dead, whether one person killed him or 1,000 killed him. If you believe the attack on the Tonkin Gulf was a conspiracy or something, which there's some evidence I think today that
I'm
makes
more
it murky.
likely to believe that one.
Yeah, but whatever happens, those people still died in Vietnam. Those people still were killed. At the end of the day, I don't know that it changes history much, but a positive conspiracy. A positive conspiracy.
Right. The moon's still there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's somehow unattainable today. But And don't give me this NASA doesn't have money BS. There's more technology in my iPhone than they had in the Saturn V, and my iPhone costs a lot less money.
Yeah.
So if they can't go today, don't tell me it's because they don't have enough my tax.
Maybe it's not worth it. It's a big old hunk of rock.
Well, I think it's easier to send robots or satellites or something.
Do some research.
Yeah, you have.
We don't know much about it.
They can bring back 100% accurate data, I think. Maybe it isn't worth the threat to human life anymore. I don't know. I don't know who's making those decisions. I mean, that's another thing where I come back. Who's deciding what we're doing with this and where the money gets spent and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know where their $22 billion budget right now is heading. They don't seem to be doing much. So, before we double their budget, let's have some, at least in the 60s, we had a goal and a plan.
Right.
So, I don't know. But,
Well, Mars will probably be the next step, but we'll see.
Well, when we could figure out how to travel out of low Earth orbit, which we apparently can't do right now, but could do 50 years ago, we'll talk about that then.
Okay.
So here's
Right.
another thing.
Yes.
Just one more thing on it.
Okay.
The Challenger,
Yes.
or the Space Shuttle program,
Yes.
is far inferior to the Saturn program. How does that make any sense?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why didn't they take the Saturn V5 and make a better rocket out of it instead of scrapping it? If that was success, I mean, we've had a lot of disasters with the Space Shuttle program.
Yeah.
You know, from the Challenger.
I remember the Challenger. I mean, I remember the Columbia before the
Right.
Challenger. I'm old enough to remember that.
There was one in 2003 I can't think of that crashed too. It was
Yeah.
lost. And so it kind of, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how we've gone backward in technology. I can't think of any other thing where we've gone backward. We make planes worse than we did in the 1960s, or I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I know that without a Cold War and without it, there's an old saying: if you don't have competition, you lose the desire to be the best. I think there's some truth to that.
I think so too.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on, but hey, happy Apollo week, whatever you think. Right?
So
what a way to start the show! I've kind of been waiting. I honestly been kind of waiting for you to throw out a moon landing reference to
Well, good.
I didn't totally go off the deep end either.
No, you behaved yourself.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. But
we all know it was conspiracy. Okay, there's no question it was conspiracy.
oh boy.
Let me tell you something else. I mean, funny you do mention it, though. I did watch something on Apollo 1 the other day because being the 50th anniversary, of course, I have to watch all of the documentaries.
Right.
Pro and con. I mean, I watched them all. One thing I think conspiracy people are guilty of is looking for a conspiracy and then only looking for things that reinforce that and not being open to anything else other than that. And I did watch something on Apollo 1, which has kind of been completely forgotten today. And one thing I do like about the movie Apollo 11, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, is that they really do talk about Apollo 1. And Apollo 1, if you want to Google it or whatever, it was three astronauts, the three people who should have landed on the moon first. That's Roger Chaffee, Ed White, and Gus Grissom. Gus Grissom was probably the most famous astronaut at the time. Ed White was the first person to walk in space. And they were all killed in a simulation exercise. They never got off the ground. They did a simulation. They were all burned to death. That happened about 2 years prior to the Armstrong, Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin thing. So I was watching that, and interesting stuff being thrown out about Apollo 1. Gus Grissom was kind of a rebel. He was kind of outspoken about, the state of the program and how it wasn't working and blah, blah, blah. And Ed White was they've been completely forgotten by history. And unfortunately, they lost their lives in a simulation, and they were cooked in a sealed capsule.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you happen to watch the documentary on Apollo 13? I think, what was Bruce Willis in it? Or
no. I didn't watch that documentary.
Was that Armageddon? I don't know. I get them confused.
Tom Hanks, you mean?
Yeah, Tom Hanks, that one.
Is that a documentary? Well, Opie, he was the one who did that movie, right? Opie, did he do that movie?
I think
the movie is good.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I got my own opinions on Apollo 13, but the
Russians shot it out of the sky, didn't they?
No, but there's some strange circumstances around it. Supposedly, if they had landed at the time they were supposed to land, they'd have landed on the dark side of the moon, which makes no sense. The fear of NASA when astronauts went up and lost oxygen, that would get hot, not cold. Yeah. Strangely, it got cold, which I don't know why. Maybe there's an illogical reason, but they, I could go on and on about it. I'm just going to not put my foot in my mouth.
I love the quote at the end of Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I figured you'd make a Pink Floyd reference. By the way, who sang the song to open the song?
Timbuk3. That was their one hit. You knew the song, though, I'm sure.
Probably.
It's from like 1980.
The only Timbuk I know is Timbuktu.
No, this was their only hit.
Okay.
You'd recognize it if you heard it, I'm sure.
All right, well.
Yeah.
You got more.
It was like in I don't know how many 80s movies.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Well, I've seen them all.
Yeah.
So.
But the quote at the end of the Dark Side of the Moon is, there is no dark side of the moon, really. As a matter of fact, it's all dark.
Well, supposedly in dark, it's like 100 degrees below zero, and in light, it's 100 degrees above zero.
Yeah? I don't know.
Quite a temperature change when you go from shade to...
That's when you want to be on I guess it would be the prime meridian of the moon.
Yeah. The international date line of the moon, that's where you want to be.
All right. Go ahead.
Well, moon landing aside, we got business to do.
We do, as usual. We're going
Way to set me up, though.
We're going to bring you some value today, as if we didn't already.
Always bring value. Good value.
Yeah. There was a recent article in the New York Times. Yeah, I know this is Community Solutions Minnesota, but I am bringing up the New York Times. It was called "These People Aren't Coming from Norway. Refugees in a Minnesota city feel a backlash." So what was this story about? This was all about our city of St. Cloud, Minnesota, and an issue up there concerning the refugee resettlement program. And because of this article, and, it's the New York Times, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
which, by the way, owns most of the major newspapers on the East Coast.
Yes.
They own the Boston Globe, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Atlanta Journal-Constipation. They own all of those newspapers, the same parent company.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, there's no, when I say New York Times, there is no question as to their slant. Well, they happen to get something right once in a while. They do slant very far away from reality, I think, in a lot of cases, and they're willing to make a case, true or not, to support what they believe. Now, here's the thing. So here's the deal. In St. Cloud, there has been a refugee resettlement program from St. Paul where they're dumping all these refugees into there. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean that has been a destination for refugees to come and settle, mostly Somali. We have a huge Somali population here in Minnesota. I mean, and maybe we'll talk a little bit in a future episode about some of the developments with the Ilhan stuff. But... And just because, we're kind of seated right in her area and she came out of this area.
You are.
That's true. You kind of escaped. But
it's a breath of fresh air having Dean Phillips compared to her.
Oh, boy.
I didn't vote for him, but I'd take him in a heartbeat over her.
At least he's keeping his big yapper shut.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know. So anyways, there's one of the largest Somali populations in the U.S., if not the largest, is here in Minneapolis. But there are also a large number of them that have been located up in St. Cloud. Now, there has been a battle kind of back and forth. And there, some people are in favor of that. Some people are not in favor of that.
Well, the point is the people of St. Cloud didn't get a vote.
Right.
I mean, if you wanted to put a Vikings stadium in St. Cloud, the people of St. Cloud would have had a lot to say about it.
Right.
You want a resettlement program, it's shut up and we don't care what you think. And if you have a certain opinion, we're going to call you racist and xenophobic and Islamophobic and everything else.
Well, and that's essentially what this article did, is it took some people kind of on the fringes and it quoted them. It did, however, quote one of the current city council people, Paul Brandmire, and he and actually Mike Conway kind of got thrown under the bus with this at a recent city council meeting. And I know I watched that. You had a chance to watch that, and there's been a group up there, and it has been not very good for St. Cloud because they've been interrupting meetings, kind of like here with the CUAPB stuff, where they were interrupting all of these meetings, and through that, they have decided to make their presence felt often, and it has caused actually St. Cloud to change the way that they're doing city council meetings. They are going to have. They're still going to take public comment. They're not going to shut the citizenry up, but they're going to stop televising that portion. It's going to be at the very end of the council meetings because people there have been coming in grandstanding for a long time. And watching the city council meeting, it's a bunch of college kids for the most part. There was one lady that, I mean, I don't want to be derogatory, and I'm not sure, but
you won't. I will be.
Okay. Well, what did you see in this footage?
I saw ignorance.
Yeah.
I saw a lack of tolerance for another point of view. Mm-hmm. I saw you're on notice if you don't agree with me.
Yeah.
You
need to apologize and step down.
Or I saw the Mark Dayton attitude. You don't like it, go leave. I mean, they didn't use that in so many words, but it was sort of, President Trump just had a dust up with Larry, Darryl, and Daryl in the Congress.
Right.
And Trump actually didn't say what he's been. He said it generally speaking, but not to them. Like, look, coming to America is a privilege. If you don't like it, you have the freedom to get the hell out of here. And he's right. Mm-hmm. And that was, everybody's outraged, but that was the gist I got from St. Cloud is going to be this way, and you're not welcome here if you don't agree with us.
Right.
And you saw a bunch of people who I probably don't pay taxes in St. Cloud. Mm-hmm. Probably aren't paying their rent, aren't paying, I mean, it's easy to sit on mom's couch and sit on a college campus and philosophize about what the world should be like. It's another thing to go into Jerkwater, USA and make it happen.
Right.
And I think you have pie in the sky thinking. I'm with you. I don't want to shut people up. You got a right to talk like a moron, and I can't stop you. But
hey, I say all the better.
Yeah, but I mean, I just saw maybe the more accurate way is a lot of these young people maybe being used by, like the Tobacco 21 people. I mean, they're being used by somebody who has a bigger agenda.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how I took it. I mean, I don't even remember the quotes of what they said. I can't think of one specifically. I'm just being very general here. But my takeaway was they're hurting their cause, not helping it. Well, and I'll tell you another thing, too. People have to understand what a council meeting is. It's freedom of assembly. Mm-hmm. Every person gets a chance to talk. The people get their chance. The council gets their chance.
Yeah.
You can't stand there and yell at a council for 20 minutes and then they get a chance to say something too.
Right.
And if you try to shut down their freedom of speech, you're no better than anybody else is. Mm-hmm. So I think there's freedom of assembly, obviously not being taught in public education whatsoever. And nobody's shutting anybody up on blogs and websites and local TV and YouTube. And I mean, whose voice is being shut up? I mean, it's just poppycock to me. But yeah, I think it's embarrassing. I mean, I just think it's embarrassing to listen to, and I think it's not fair to residents of St. Cloud that they've had this program. I don't know how St. Cloud was picked, or but you just take 5,000 people or whatever it was and just dump them on a community. And that community has no say in whether they want to be part of a program or not. I mean, what do you expect to happen? Mm-hmm. I mean, the most prominent name of I've heard of some elementary schools for kids in St. Cloud is Muhammad. I mean, you've had a total culture change overnight, not an organic one, where it happens maybe over a generation. Because we've seen that here in the Twin Cities, where I'll even in my family, my mom grew up in Minneapolis. She moved to the suburbs, and my sister and I moved farther out. It was a generational organic thing. Nobody planned it. Nobody plotted it.
Right.
Nobody tried to make it happen,
but
really.
Now they have a term for that, too. They call that white flight because...
Oh, white, yeah, that's right.
Because us honkies don't want to be around people that aren't like us.
Right.
Joke.
Yeah, it's okay it's okay to have, a little Mogadishu, but to have, little, what do you want to call it? Little Dublin.
But that's not even the case.
No, it's not.
You go out into Plymouth and or any of these other places, even Corcoran or wherever, there are a lot of people who are not white-skinned living in a lot of the houses out there. I'm sorry to tell you.
There are some. Yeah, it's less of a percentage, but people are choosing to live wherever they, minorities are they want good schools, they want strong neighborhoods.
Why wouldn't they?
Different than, it's.
Why wouldn't they?
But that's part of the problem is we have these central planners who try to move the chess pieces instead of just letting success breed success or freedom of choice. It's to try to, I call it put chocolate chips in a vanilla shake, but I mean, it's try to make that happen in a heartbeat. And you just can't, if it happens organically over time, it will go so much better than if it's forced upon.
Right.
If I'm sitting in St. Cloud and I've been paying taxes and I've been contributing to my city, propping up the schools, propping up the county, propping up the city, spending my money there. And all of a sudden, on my dime, a bunch of people are just dropped in the city. No one cares whether this is my life here.
Right.
No one cares whether, it's not maybe a situation of you're just bound to create hostilities that way.
Yeah.
It's just bound to happen. There's going to be a cultural divide, a language barrier, because, again, it's not organically happening.
Right.
The next generation learns English, then their kids speak it like you and I do.
And I will say this as well. Not that I think people should ever be forced to live in dangerous situations or live in a place where, I think that there is, in the struggle of trying to get from the bottom to somewhere further up the ladder, that is where character often is built. We're talking work ethic, we're talking education,
self-motivation,
being
finance.
able to dream and reach for the stars. And when things are just handed to you, you're not forced to do those things.
No, there's no sense of achievement. There's no goal setting.
Yeah.
There's if anything, you've created another dependency class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where, they're dependent on the government for housing, education, food, water, you name it, healthcare.
Right.
Transit. And we've just, I don't understand. And why can't the issue be debated and be debated honestly? I mean, that's another thing that kind of just jerks me around. It's like, we've gone from dissent is patriotic to dissent is racist.
Oh, exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know. All I know is I'm glad I don't live there. That's just all I can say.
Right. Well, the name of this group is called Unite Cloud, that is stirring up all this trouble. And if you want to see,
I'm curious where they're getting money to do this from. I'm imagining refugees don't have a whole lot of dough.
Well, it's not the refugees that are doing this.
No,
these are all liberal white kids.
Right. It's the people who it's the white guilt, and it's what they're being fed in these schools and so on and so forth. This is no different than using a bunch of 18-year-olds to throw pig's blood on a college campus and protest Vietnam.
Right.
You've got a couple leaders, a couple yahoos, a couple Pancho Villas out there, feeding this crap into their heads. You think an 18-year-old college kid comes up with this on their own? No, what are they concerned about? Where's the party this week? Who stole my iPhone?
Yeah.
Did
I remember to study for finals?
Yeah. When's the fantasy football draft? That's what I was doing. I can tell you that.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty rough up there. It's just pretty rough. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
Yeah, well, and I don't either, unfortunately.
And is this refugee program over? Are they still? Is the boat still docking there? What's the scoop?
Yeah,
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it hasn't ended. As far as I know.
No, I don't believe that it has either. I believe that it's still going forward, and it's just going to keep going. I think that it is going to take some time, and the right people to be able to at least manage this correctly. From what I understand, the mayor is on board with it. St. Cloud is a strong mayor city, so you have a mayor who actually is in charge with veto power and a separate council. In St. Cloud, they have 4 wards and 3 at-large seats. Mm-hmm. The 3 at-large seats are up next year, by the way.
Nice plug.
Yeah. But that's kind of how that shakes out. So if you're interested in going back and listening to that, believe it was the July 8th, and it's like the last 17 minutes of the city council meeting, and you'll see that it is just kind of like crazy town. You've got somebody
have a few Jack and Cokes first.
Yeah, you got the girl with purple hair. You got the guy that thinks he's auditioning for a Shakespeare play, and so they didn't even bother picking the best of who it was, who was available. I mean, this guy. I mean, I know our viewers can't see this, but this guy, he looks like he's dressed like to captain a boat, and then he's reading it like it's a dramatic interpretation of.
It looks like The Hunt for Red October. That's what he looks like.
He looks like he ate Sean Connery and stole his hat.
What are you doing on my ship? Ryan, what are you doing on my ship?
Yes. So, yeah, I don't get it.
So between those 3, it's like Ilhan, Omar, and AOC. Which one's Larry, Daryl, and Daryl? That's what
I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe a Newhart reference for all you millennials out there who didn't see the great the second Newhart show.
Yes.
See, I never saw the one in the 70s.
Yeah.
I only saw the second one where they're managing the winter resort or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I never saw the first one.
I think I did.
Yeah. I don't even remember reruns of it.
That's all right. But yeah, so that's going on in St. Cloud, and it's kind of a big deal. And you've got the Unite Cloud group, and they're trying to pin something on a couple of city council people that. It's not really the way they're painting it to be. I know that.
So Unite Cloud, is that Cumulus and Cirrus clouds?
Yes, that's exactly it.
All right. It's a little cloudy.
Right. Yes. Well.
Yeah, a few city council people they'll get past it, but are getting kind of lumped in with some comments made by other folks. But,
Yeah. But, they're asking them to resign, and stuff like that, apologize and quit. So if you're up in that area, just maybe shoot them a note and say, hey, we know the truth.
And don't apologize. It'll make you weaker. Don't quit because you didn't do anything wrong. I mean, and to the protesters up there, they have to respect other points of view. Yeah. I mean, I know that total obedience is sort of the goal of some in politics, but that goes against everything that we hold dear. If you even know that, but there's an old saying, Jay. You don't know if you can't know freedom if you never had it.
Well, and this is the thing with millennials, if I can just say this for a moment. They want to shut down free speech.
Yes.
They want to shut down the ability to own a firearm. They want to shut down free and fair, they want to try people in the court of public opinion rather than have them tried by a jury.
They want to put people out of business by spreading bad things about look what's happening at Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
and the My Pillow guy, who they disagree with, yet not separating their personal opinion from the businesses they run and all the employees who work for them. I mean, you want to go out and demonize big oil, well, or something like that. Well, the oil people got their millions of dollars no matter what. You put them out of business, it's your neighbor that's out of a job.
Right.
But again, among socialists, you don't have that line of thinking. You don't,
You must shut down dissent.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, it is scary about how dissent is. The worst place is college campuses. I mean, I think they have embalmed fascism.
Yes.
I mean, it is sick what goes on college campuses. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought it's funny. Like the anti-bullying people use bullying to try and achieve non-bullying. And, like Antifa really uses fascist techniques to go about getting rid of fascism. It doesn't work like that.
They don't know what fascism is.
No.
Why don't we just be honest?
They could sit in a room with Mussolini and think that they were over at Grandpa's house. It's...
They don't have a clue what fascism is.
They don't.
They probably couldn't tell you what the thing Mussolini did.
No.
So the ignorance is incredible.
Oh, so yeah. Anyways, St. Cloud, check that out. It is, in fact, the council meeting from July 8th, 2019, and it's about the last 17 or so minutes. And it's good for a laugh, if nothing else, but then, support these guys up there because they really need your help. They're outnumbered, and they could use it. So, all right. We're going to move on to the subject for today. The song was all about being in class.
That's right. I'm going to be the bus driver.
Yeah.
I'm taking you to school.
All right. Bring me in.
Well, education finance, Jay, is there a more boring subject than that?
No,
I don't.
Not.
It's probably.
But we're going to make it fun.
Well,
you're going to be having so much fun.
Well, and I mean, we're going to talk about it generally speaking,
right,
and a little bit specific. We'll pick on District 281 a little bit, but not overtly. We're just going to.
They all work the same though, because they're
much.
Minnesota law is what guides how they do their funding, and they have a little bit of freedom to operate, but it's not like you're not going to find a laboratory of experimentation among school districts.
Yeah, and the school districts will tell you that that's somebody else's fault, but I always argue that they've advocated for the things they now despise. Mm-hmm. They've advocated for all-day kindergarten, but they hate having to provide it. They've advocated for early childhood ed, but they complain that they don't have space or they don't have blah, 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 blah. They've advocated for federal funding, and they do nothing but bitch about it. Mm-hmm. They've advocated for special ed this and special ed that, and they say they don't have the staff for it. So, I mean, they've advocated for a lot of the things that they whine about. So while there is truth to what they say, that the state and federal governments have come in and taken away some of their choices, mm-hmm. I would argue that they have helped cause that.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And the unions have helped with that. And how many boards are union-backed and union-funded, union-financed. Yeah. It's all just they're all kind of one big blah to me.
Right. Well, I mean, look at any election, it's usually the union-endorsed candidates that win.
Well,
why should they be allowed to do that?
But again, there's, to me, I think unions have the freedom to do what they can do. However, there are ways to fix that without shutting the union up.
Right.
Number one, You don't run at-large elections. I mean, that's the number one
would be
thing.
helpful.
That's the number one thing that could stop that. Number two, you start the election in May, not in August.
Right.
Okay, those are two big changes.
Those are huge, yeah.
Because now you've got, how do you take on District 281 is bigger than a Senate district. How do you take that on?
Yeah, I don't know how you take that on. It's hard because you have to travel the whole thing. You have to try and
7 cities,
and it's not just parents. You got to get to the old and the young alike. People with no kids, people with 20 kids. You got to talk to everybody because everybody could vote.
Right. Doesn't matter if they have kids or not. It's one vote no matter what. So it's a difficult task to make a lot of changes in. Now, school boards will, first let me just talk a little generally speaking here about how they get their money. There was a time, it's actually not that many years ago, where schools were 100% put up by the neighborhoods they were at. You need a license to teach. Spirituality was almost always mixed in with regular education, which I think is a good thing.
Yes,
I think having morals and higher I think it helps shape a person's character. But that's my opinion. Post World War II, however, it became chic, shall we say, to create, and this coincided with the baby boom and the growth of suburbs and all that, that we had to have these massive schools and school districts,
right?
And that were all funded through property taxes.
Right.
It was sort of the beginning of the public schools being the monster that they've become.
Which is a huge change, because if I can bring in history a little bit, when public schools started in Minnesota, they had like one per town or township, and then after it reached a certain amount of families, it would split into 2 school districts.
Yeah. And it wasn't, the state didn't cut them a check. It was, public meant something different back then.
Right.
Public in that anybody could go, but it wasn't necessarily funded. It wasn't funded at all the way they are today.
Oh, no. That didn't happen until much later.
Yeah, so it happened years and years. There were public schools before the Civil War, but
yes,
they didn't look the way it did later. So you had, and I'm being very general here. I'm not giving a lot of specifics. I don't want to waste our time like that. You want to go research it, you can do that. We don't tell people what they can read here. But over time, it became concerns were raised about, all schools not being equal access, poorer areas versus richer areas, and the state decided that they were going to take over education funding.
Yes,
instead of writing a check to your local school, which you still do, but not the way you used to.
No, it came through the Minnesota Board of Education.
Yeah, we now send it through up to St. Paul, and they have a formula that kicks out a per pupil formula. And the formula in itself is not X amount of money times the amount of students.
No, most calculus teachers couldn't figure it out.
Well, the per pupil thing is only one aspect of it. There's a whole bunch of things on top of that. So it becomes based on enrollment. Enrollment really is the key thing. The original number was around $5,000. It's up around $6,300 now, with a 2% increase for the upcoming school year, for the budget that just started on July 1st, and 2% more in the 2021 school year to cover the 2-year state biennium. Now, why do we mention all this? Because how your schools are funded, starts with this basic formula.
Yes.
On top of that, there's a million different things that I, who have been studying this for 10 years, still really can't explain completely. There's special ed money. There's free and reduced lunch. Which goes into a different fund because the kitchen staff has its own its own revenue and expenses.
Right.
There's operating costs. Some capital costs are in the budget. Some are in their what's called their deferred maintenance budget.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like the city. We talked about filling a pothole is maintenance. Yeah. Rebuilding the road is not.
Mm-hmm.
Schools would be the same way. Painting the side of a building is maintenance. Building an entire new building is not.
Right.
So that's they kind of operate in that same principle. Now, if you look at, first I want to say, you might be shocked. Jay, I don't fully get, and maybe you can help me on this.
Okay.
I really don't get when I look at education fund. We're going to pick on District 281, where the money all goes. Now, let me use an example. I'm going to use Cooper High School. Now, by the way, you won't find this information on their website.
Oh, of course not. That
I have
would
to go
provide clarity.
publicschoolreview.com. I don't know how reputable they are, but I wanted this broken down by school, and they don't have that on the district's website. They have it, generally speaking, in pie charts and things like that. But if you go to Cooper High School, 1,623 students. That must have been last year's.
Okay.
And there actually are several times they take enrollment, and you have funding adjustments based on that. It's called your ADM, your average daily membership. So there is something different there. Now, there are full-time classroom teachers. Now, I'm not 100% sure what that means. 94 of them at Cooper High School.
Full-time classroom teachers would be your
core stuff.
It'd be most of your core stuff. You still might have like a band teacher or something
Phy-ed.
like that. Yeah, your non-full-time would be a lot of times they'll offer jobs that are like 0.5 or 0.4 or whatever 0.75. And then often you'll have a teacher then that teaches at more than one school in order to make that a full-time position. Or maybe they're just part-time and, because a spouse works full-time or whatever. And,
so 94 they somehow get to. That's a 17 to 1 student-teacher ratio.
Yes.
Now, Jay, if that's the case, where do we get classrooms of 35 kids?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not
suppose
asking.
they might include, classroom teachers. They're not going to include special ed in that either because they don't really lead a classroom. They do more one-on-one work, and they sit in the classrooms.
So I don't know what they do.
So
I'm asking out of ignorance.
Yeah.
So,
so they're not going to include special ed in that either.
And the assistants, I'm sure, aren't included. They're not licensed staff.
Right.
So, where is this? We always hear, every time it's referendum time, we hear how the class sizes are going to have 89 kids in a class. Yet, their own numbers show something completely different.
Yeah, 17 to 1. That should mean there are pretty small class sizes.
Well, and here's another thing.
Their grades aren't getting any better.
No, they're not. 24% proficiency in math. And remember we did a 281 show a few months ago? We talked about this. I couldn't find this info.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to go back and look. I don't want to be Cooper's where I graduated. I don't want to pick on them too much. But, the point I'm trying to make is where do they get these statistics that we don't pass a referendum, we're going to have 38 kids in a class. Where do they get that?
Right. Yeah.
Here's another thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm getting this from niche.com. Who are they?
Niche.com. I don't know.
Niche.com?
Like Frederick Nietzsche? No, I don't think it's that. It's niche.com. Yes.
Okay, here is the district numbers. Student-teacher ratio is 16 to 1.
Okay.
In the district. Average teacher salary is $65,000.
Wow.
Now, that's not including benefits, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Why don't we call that $100,000? Total expenses for the district, $187 million. Expenses per student, $15,028. Now, Jay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Say there's 16 kids in the class. We know that's BS.
Right.
They're each bringing in $16,000 a head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's $240,000.
Yes.
If that teacher's making $100,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me where the other $140,000 is going?
No.
Right. We're both stumped.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask the district, they're going to do a couple different things. They'll blame the state.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say it's going into special ed. It's going into English language. I don't know how many of those there are in high school. How do you get a high school diploma if you can't speak English? I don't understand it.
It happens. When I was in middle school, there were plenty of kids that did not speak English in my class.
Were they all at your grade level and so on?
Yeah, I guess so. They just kind of stick them in the grade they thought they should be in.
The old social promotion.
Yeah. They weren't starting, 13-year-olds at grade 1 because they couldn't speak English. I'll say that.
Well, and the district doesn't have the best financial pages. They used to be better. At least I couldn't find it. They have a little 12-page promo, I guess you'd call it, on what they do, where the money goes. Would you be surprised to know, Jay, general fund expenditures by program, only 42% of the money is spent on what they call regular instruction.
42%. That seems like not much.
So every $100 to this district, 42 goes into, I'm just going to call that core classes or your normal student just taking, the algebra, the history, the biology.
Probably even music and art. And
you need some of
your
that.
electives. And,
Maybe a foreign language, perhaps.
Again, it doesn't cover probably special education. It doesn't cover after-school activities. It doesn't,
Well, let me go on here.
Yeah.
18% of the money is for special education instruction.
Okay, so I was right there. That's a whole different bucket.
9% of the money is for instructional support. Now, what would that be? Would that be assistant teachers?
Yeah, educational assistants or whatever,
9%?
Yeah.
1 out of $10 is spent on instructional
there's a lot
support?
Of them. Especially within the special ed.
How about counselors and stuff? Would they fall under that?
Yeah, they might.
Okay. Well,
that's possible.
Although they have 6% spent on district support, whatever that is, 10% spent on pupil support, whatever
Was that
that
like
is.
eyeglasses?
Yeah, maybe.
Contacts?
3% alone spent on administration. And 10% spent on sites and buildings. That must be maintenance.
Yeah.
And here's my favorite category. 100. What's my favorite category? Other. 1% spent on other.
Oh, my word.
So
it's 1%, thank goodness, and you don't have to try and make a case for, hey, 30% was in other, and we can't verify what it is. But.
I know. But so only, less than half of the money is spent on regular. Is there a such thing in education as spending so much time on the kids who are allegedly behind or disadvantaged or high risk, or whatever label that you want to put on them, that the kids who are there to get their regular, normal education are cut out in some way?
Yeah.
Again, the obsession with equality and race and, you just wonder how many things are getting missed because of that and how much opportunity is not being realized.
Right.
Here's another great Cooper stat that I want to share. Where the hell is it? Hang on, I'll find it. It had to do with their staff here. Oh, hang on, I got the wrong. Oh. Damn it. You start talking. I can't find it.
I have to fill the dead air. Huh? Yeah. Well, I mean, just looking at Cooper itself, I mean, this is a school that, you know, it has had a lot of benefit from like the Choice is Yours program, which brings in extra money as well. I mean, the district as a whole, but this school including gets an A+ for diversity. A lot of that, according to these sites, that just means that there's a whole lot of different ethnicities there.
Well, there could be a whole lot of ethnicities that live in the area and have kids of school age. Couldn't that just be it?
Yeah. Well, but they do bus a lot of people in from Minneapolis.
They actually bus less than they used to.
Right. That has
Choice is Yours is actually kind of I don't want to say being phased out, but it isn't the program it was 10 years ago.
But they're saying 69% of enrollment are minorities.
Wow.
With the majority of those being black, which is higher than the Minnesota state average of 32%.
Huh. I should look up here. I will look up Armstrong in a second. Here's my favorite stat.
Yeah.
Cooper Senior High School population has declined 7% over the past 5 years.
Oh, boy.
Yet teacher population has grown by 8%. So think of a business having fewer customers and more employees.
Yeah.
You know, and how little sense that makes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have fewer students, you know, and again, I'm not saying a bunch of people should be fired, but maybe somebody retires and we don't replace them.
Right.
Maybe somebody leaves the district and we can do a lot of that by attrition.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to become by mass firing or anything like that.
Right.
But I still don't get how 42% of the money is spent on regular instruction.
It seems low.
I mean, almost $1 out of $5 is spent on special ed. Special ed cover what is special ed? I mean, is special ed just anything?
It can be. I mean, when I was teaching, the list of special ed kids was so long, and more and more kids are being diagnosed, and I think incorrectly in most cases, with certain things.
Don't get me started on
ADHD,
bipolar, and BS.
You know, and so all of these kids get put into special ed because apparently, you know, if you can't concentrate, you're too stupid to, you know. But I think that a lot of kids get misdiagnosed and get labeled as emotional behavioral disorder, or EBD, when really they're just have bad parents, or
they're just kids.
Or they're just kids. They're bored.
Do you have any idea? I would have been hooked up to an IV of Ritalin had that been around in the 80s.
Yeah, it was around in the 80s.
Okay, well, nobody around me was ever.
Yeah.
None of my friends. And let me tell you something.
They didn't push it like they push it now.
My mom and dad, you know what their answer was? Go outside. Go ride your bike. Go shoot baskets.
Yeah.
You'll rear it off and you'll be asleep by the time it's dark. Guess what? They were right.
Yeah.
I was a kid. I had a lot of energy. I wanted to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to learn, too. I mean, I had a passion for learning.
Mm-hmm.
And their answer was, hey, he's a normal kid. He's a happer boy. Yeah. He's a special boy. He's whatever. But nobody today. I would be in a straitjacket if I were an elementary school kid today.
Yeah.
You know, I'd have sat there and cut my own hair in class or something. I don't know.
Right.
I'd have been a nutbag. And all these medications do is get a kid to sit down and shut up.
Right. Makes you into a zombie.
Right. And that's not. Anybody who tells me their kid has trouble concentrating, here's my answer to that. Go put a video game on in front of them, and I bet they concentrate just fine.
Yep.
So I don't buy that either. Now, and here's the other problem with that. The kids who really are special ed get their resources depleted. Mm-hmm. The kids who really have an issue or really are being abused at home or are malnourished or whatever.
Right, that cerebral palsy or
schizophrenia, something like that. Yeah. Those resources are for them.
Yeah.
and they're being taken and by little Johnny who is running around in class or had too much had a Coke at lunch or whatever, and now he's ADHD. Now he's bipolar because the next day he was sad.
Yeah.
So he's manic now. He's up and down.
Right.
So we got to drug him. So I mean, special ed in and of itself is something that needs a ton of reform.
Yeah.
Because the dollars are just being diverted to that constantly.
But the schools know they get extra money for that.
Exactly.
And so that's why they're so eager to be able to label kids as emotionally behavioral.
And they whine about it.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
They do too, yeah.
And whose fault is it? It's St. Paul's fault.
Well, they whine about it to try and get more money. That's why they whine.
But I mean, but they label these kids knowing what money they're going to get, and what money they're not going to get. It's not a shock to them.
Right.
So the idea that they're going to do all of this and then complain about it, like I said before, they've lobbied for this money and for these changes, and now they sit around and complain about them. Mm-hmm. So I mean, but special ed is out of control. It is. Oh, you're a bad test taker. Yeah. So you've got, whatever, test taking disorder.
Test taking anxiety. Yeah.
TTA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just silly. And I mean, and who's administering all these drugs, and who's following up on this, and who's, what are the results of this? I mean, are these kids improving? Are they out of special ed in 6 months or a year? Are we doing something other than just plying them with drugs, or are they learning other techniques? I mean, if you have trouble taking tests, there's you go online. There's practice tests. You can there's no short of access to improvement.
Right.
Or are we giving them their Zoloft or their whatever else, their Latuda, and then we're just that's another depression. Oh. And then we're just taking the money in and next kid up. Yeah. And we put a label, and I think it's really dangerous to label kids. I just think that's really, labeling kids at risk because their parents are divorced or because their dad works at a blue collar job. That's
some level is below, But
that's really, I mean, we would never allow that in any other field. I mean, you'd never label somebody something and get away with it somewhere else. No. But they can do this in education. They can label somebody this or that, or if you're, free and reduced lunch, that's like, you watch a board meeting on Robbinsdale, count how many times they say free and reduced lunch. Mm-hmm. How are after-school programs doing? Great. Okay, how many kids free and reduced lunch are playing soccer? I mean, they're obsessed with it. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying, I think after-school activities can be good. Yeah. Not always. I mean, if you're in a sport and your kid sucks... Maybe,
as long as they're having fun. That's
true, but maybe they should be doing something different. Maybe they should be on the chess club instead of the football team. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It can be good. It can be, a not so great experience too. I'm just throwing out. I think people speak very generally about that, but if you don't have the reinforcement at home, if you don't have the peers with you, I mean, it could be a negative one too. So I don't know. Here's the thing. This education funding is so convoluted. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of exceptions to this and that, the extra money that comes in for referendum support. Districts get money for that. Oh, yeah. They get money for how many limited English speakers they have. Mm-hmm. They get their pensions subsidized, just like cities and counties do. They get even aid for declining enrollment. Yeah, there is a formula that lessens so everybody can keep their jobs. Right. It's designed to keep the union membership high, but there's even a formula for that gets thrown in there as well. So. Where the money comes from, I mean, most of it comes from the state through the general formula or through other state aid programs. I'm just going to use Robbinsdale's little pie chart. Their levy covers about a quarter of everything. The federal government is about 4 to 5%, somewhere in that range. Free and reduced lunch is a big part of that. Special ed is a big part of that. Title IX, or I'm sorry, Title I, I should say.
Right.
Not Title IX.
Yeah.
Title I is a part of that. And of course, 2%, my favorite, other. And by the way, there's 2 levies.
Yes, there are.
There's the operating levy, which is the big one, but then there's their capital levy, which is the other one. So remember, there's 2 buckets that they put money in.
Right.
So it's like the cities and the counties. It's very deceiving when you just look at their $180 million budget.
Yeah.
That's not it.
But it's amazing to me that they've got these 2 levies and they take up 24% of the pie.
That shows you how much
waste there is.
Well, it shows you how much more is coming in from other places. And I should say
70% from state aid and 4% from federal. That is 3/4 of all of their money comes in from government. It's all tax money. I mean,
Right.
anything that the government gives them is tax money, but not directly from local residents.
right. And you think about it like this. 4% coming in from federal, so people, how much money, we've talked about this before, if I live in Maine and I send money to the federal government takes a chunk out for their administrative costs and their studies and their pool pass and whatever else they have. Then they take the money and send it to District 281. Okay. How much, what did that dollar start with? That $100 in Maine is probably $20 by the time it gets to District 281.
I love that sweet Maine money.
Yeah. And again, the districts, and 281's not alone in this.
Right.
The districts whine about federal funding, yet go back to the 60s. Who was pushing for a federal Department of Education? Go back then into the 70s. Who was pushing for special ed funds from the federal government? That was started around 75, 76, somewhere around there. Who was that? The very same entities that now complain about everything that comes on top of it. It's like, well, look, you're living in the bed you made.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but, this is another thing here. You know how many unions there are at District 281? I actually don't know the answer, but no.
There's more than 2?
I think there's 7.
7?
6, I think, because the bus drivers aren't there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about stuff like that.
Okay, you've got AFSCME, you've got SEIU. Because the service employees have their own union. The custodians and bus drivers used to, but that's contracted out now.
Right.
The office employees, that's AFSCME.
Yeah.
There's the principals, and they're not covered under RFT, I don't think.
No.
And then I don't know if the assistants are covered under Robbinsdale Federation of Teachers. I'm not sure. I think they're separate. I think licensed staff is one deal. Non-licensed staff is another. I don't know if if they all are under the same union.
They're under the same union, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a half a dozen, though.
Okay.
Because I want to say the principals have their own teachers, and I'll just lump assistants with them.
Is RFT part of Education Minnesota?
Yes.
Or is it, okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
They're the parent
of
everybody.
Right.
They burp them and all that stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of unions to deal with, and a lot of jobs associated with that. But I've always said the school districts aren't jobs programs. They're not there to provide work.
No.
So how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this mess? This is a mess.
It's a mess.
I mean, someday they're going to collapse under their own weight. But I mean, how many kids in the meantime? I mean, we could probably go into any district and see the same things here.
I'm sure.
By the way, general fund expenses, 78% is spent on salary and fringe.
Wow.
I'm gonna guess that's benefits. 3% is spent on capital. That's the maintenance stuff. 2% on supplies, which should be much smaller. I mean, we really don't need to buy textbooks anymore. It's much easier to update iPads.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Don't we have a technology levy?
Yeah.
16% spent on contracted services. Now, I'm going to guess part of that's the bus drivers and things like that. But what else would they have for contract? It seems like a lot for contracted services.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry if we're not giving out the most specific information, but I would challenge anybody to go to this website and tell me what.
Well, they do keep it pretty convoluted. There's only so much that you can get out of it. These formulas that they use to determine funding are very complicated.
Needlessly so.
On purpose.
And I mentioned that the base, the 6,000 whatever, is not just times however many students. There is a high school student or a junior high, 7 through 12. Okay, the way teachers' licenses work is you have an elementary education license, and from 7th grade up, you're licensed to teach one subject.
Okay.
So the formulas are different kind of based on that. If you're in kindergarten, you take the formula times something. If you're an elementary student, you take the formula times 1.1 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And if it's 7 through 12, it's times 1.3.
Okay.
So that's $6,000 for a high school student. That's the base formula.
Yeah.
Actually times that by 1.3. That's what they're really getting.
Right.
So it's again, that's convoluted. People look at that and think, no, there's more money on top of it. Mm-hmm. So that in of itself is, I don't know where they come up. Where do you come up with this? I think it's more for junior high and high school because they have more subjects or more choice, and they have to. You have to have. You're learning the basics in elementary school, and you learn hopefully more in high school. I mean, I graduated with some people. I'm not sure how much they went.
Yeah.
Which is bad to say, I know. But so education finance, I mean, most of it comes from the good old state of Minnesota. And, school boards complain about the limited authority they have. But, Jay, let me ask you a question. Do you think the school boards really want 100% authority over everything?
No.
Or is it just, the whipping boy? They can always have the boogeyman,
right?
To blame in case they don't like something.
Right. They don't want to figure all this out on their own.
No, I mean, it's all done for them. All they do is say yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, they would like more money, but...
Well, I'd like a raise at work. Okay? So, I mean, and here's the thing. These schools are getting this money regardless of what kind of job they do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're going to get 2% more from the state of Minnesota per student next year. I don't care if not a single student graduates. Doesn't matter.
Right.
In fact, it'll beef up their enrollment if they come back for another year. If they flunk out,
right,
and they come back, does that increase their enrollment numbers?
I suppose it does. Whoever's going to school in a given year.
So everybody could be on that 7-year plan and you keep beefing up the coffers.
Yeah.
I still want to know, how do you end up with 35, 40 kids in a class when you have a 17-1, 16-1 ratio? And in elementary school, same thing. How do you get that? It's not like the kids are taking 30 different subjects like you can in high school.
Yeah, but they say that 16-1 is the state average.
Well, if that's the case, they should get a huge cut in education.
Yeah.
Because you can make it 20-1, 22-1, 24-1. I'm going to tell you that when I was a kid, okay, and we're not going back that far, 25, 30 years. While I was in elementary school, it'd be more like 30. But, 25 kids in a class was
normal.
Not counting Phi Ed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere up to 30.
Yeah. I can remember
could have been
31.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think more than that, but
I went to a very small elementary school, Lincoln Elementary, which is something else. I'm a charter school now.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, my entire grade had like 2 teachers. Like 4th grade, there'd be 56 kids, and we had 2 teachers.
Huh.
And we were in those classrooms all day long.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, now the average is 16 to 1. I mean, how do we get classes of 30?
I don't know.
But here's my question. Okay, here's a challenge for the local media. Here's a challenge for you activists out there, or whatever. I want the district to explain. When I just mentioned $240,000 in the classroom and a teacher pulling down $100,000 of it, where is that other $140,000? I want a detailed breakdown of where that's going.
Yeah.
Not a pie chart with other and support staff and BS like that. I want to know where that money's going. I'm entitled to know that.
Yeah. Yeah, we should all be so lucky as to be able to track and monitor where our tax money goes.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck. Well, to wrap up, folks.
Yes.
Because it's getting late where we are. Education funding, a convoluted, difficult process. Most of the money, counties sometimes are the same way, depending on how many mandates they fall under. Money's coming from somewhere else. That levy is, like you said, a small portion of what are being paid. You got Cooper High School with declining enrollment, yet inclining staff.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason is, I have no idea. And you got $15,000 per kid in District 2. It's over 12 statewide. $15,000 per kid.
Wow.
And it's not enough. It's never enough. Not enough.
Nope, they always need something else. So, you know what? If you're out there and this is disgusting you as much as it disgusts us, you know, sure, the state runs a lot of this, and there's only so much you can do, but there is still a lot at your discretion if you're the one making the rules. And so getting elected to a school board would be a great opportunity for you to decide how this money gets spent at your school district. Also, to get on an advisory commission with a school helps you and the people who live in your district to be able to have control over the curriculum being used, over how they use some of the property that they're on. These are things that you can do even right now, and you don't have to wait. I mean, you could get on a commission now and start building your chops, and if you like it, maybe you run next year or the year after, whether you have even or odd year elections. You can do this. And we want to see you try, and we want to help you. So if you have questions about that, or you see things happening in your school district that don't make sense, get a hold of us. That's COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. That's COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com.
And about that moon landing.
Yeah.
Let me know. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
By the
boy.
way.
Yes.
You can go see the songs. Where can you get the songs to the podcast?
You can go out to Spotify, to Community Solutions, music from the podcast playlist.
And
yes,
the podcasts are available on YouTube. They're available on our blog. They're available also at our special
Facebook,
site.
Yeah.
What's our other site?
Our other site?
Lisbon.
Yeah. Well, you can get that just by going on your phone, going to the podcast app. That will
wherever. I mean, you know, I'm trying to prove I know where they are.
You're showing you went to public school.
By the way,
yes.
Can I just say that there are some. I haven't listened to every podcast we've put out. Even I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't like hearing myself talk.
I have,
what.
but I guess that's because I edit them.
Yeah, but so we're getting up there to the point where it's a colossal thing to go back and listen to others. Yeah. But I encourage people, especially new people hearing this, to go back and check out some of our previous podcasts. Yep. There's a whole list of where we're on like 125 shows. I mean, all the topics and interviews and things we've done.
Yeah.
If you have any interest in this at all, folks, go back and listen to some of these old podcasts, especially the ones about budgets, bonding, things like that. They're timeless.
Yeah.
Okay, some of our
Maybe I'll start
issue-oriented.
throwing some of those back up on social media. And,
Yeah, some of our shows that are kind of timely, they're still fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Because we're funny. Okay, but it's an education in itself. And we're sitting here talking about public school. Not a thing we're talking about you're going to learn in a public school. This isn't. We are teaching a class right here, and we're doing a damn good job of it. If I do say so myself.
I think so. And
I'm ready for that step and lane in the union contract to kick in.
I'm waiting for my PhD to come any day.
I need my honorary. I'm not going to go earn it.
Well,
Right.
no, I'm not spending that money at that kind of place.
Goodness gracious.
Ugh. Don't need
All right,
that.
so if Apollo 11 really landed, tell me this. No, I'm just kidding.
Goodness. COMMSolutionsMN@gmail.com. You know where to find us. We'll be back 1 week from today. Don't you go anywhere. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.